They said it was just a significant rain event. That's what the weather folks called it, as if that made it sound manageable. But let me tell you something, that was no rain. That was a personal vendetta from the sky, a biblical downpour with the force of 1,000 angry gods, all zeroing in on my roof shingles with the precision of a sniper. I'm talking about marble-sized raindrops slamming against the garage windows like a battalion of tiny, furious drummers. But me? I was calm, serene, even, because inside that garage-me sanctuary of solder and steel sat my secret weapon. She was parked on a dual-axle trailer like a sleeping beast, a gray metal box no bigger than a smart car, humming with restrained power. Cables thick as a weightlifter's forearm ran from her sides into a custom control panel lit with analog dials, glowing LEDs, and switches that practically begged to be flipped. I called her the Equalizer, but most people in the neighborhood knew her, unknowingly, as the Beast. Now, I'm not some prepper. I'm not hiding from the government or planning for the end times. I'm Ryan Maddox, electrical engineer and consultant on large-scale grid systems. I've spent years studying what happens when the lights go out when the grid gives up on you. But my obsession with the Beast wasn't born from paranoia. No, it was born from the smoldering ashes of fantasy football. 4 years ago, a squirrel met its untimely end in a transformer down the street during championship weekend. That one misguided rodent blew the power for the entire neighborhood for 3 whole days. 3 days when I needed internet, power, and just a little luck to clinch the title against my smug brother-in-law. Instead, I sat in the dark listening to the pathetic hum of his generator as he beat me by 6 points. That squirrel didn't just trip a circuit, tripped my entire outlook on power independence. From that day on, I vowed to never again let my destiny be tied to some overhead cable or a suicidal rodent. So I built the Beast, 20 kilowatts of pure diesel-fed power, whisper quiet with industrial soundproofing, rigged with a transformer bank and inverters that made utility engineers nod in respect. And that night, as my phone buzzed with an emergency flood warning, I just sipped my coffee and smiled. I had prepared. But preparation, it turns out, isn't always enough when your enemy doesn't play by the rules. And my enemy? Her name was Loretta Vance, president of the Oak Hollow Homeowners Association. Imagine if a clipboard came to life and developed a superiority complex that was Loretta. Oak Hollow was one of those pristine suburban developments where the paint shades were limited to 3 neutral colors and your lawn height was monitored more strictly than your credit score. My first run-in with Loretta happened the day I installed the discharge pipe for the sump system in the backyard. A neat white PVC pipe, painted to match the foundation and tucked behind a thick hedge. You had to basically be a drone to even spot it. But less than 2 hours later, she was at my door, bypassing the doorbell, tapping with that signature HOA authority knock. "Mr. Maddox," she said, her tone devoid of greeting, warmth, or even humanity. "You have made a non-standard external modification without prior approval." I blinked. "You mean the sump pipe? The one SAVYing my basement from turning into Atlantis?" She didn't blink. It violates Bylaw 8, Section 3, Subsection D, exterior aesthetic uniformity. PVC is not an approved drainage material. "Loretta, it's painted. It matches the foundation. It's behind a bush. Do you have X-ray VY shown now?" She consulted her clipboard like it might offer comfort. Non-standard is non-standard. If everyone did what they wanted, there would be chaos. If chaos is dry basements, I welcome it, I said, and that was the moment the war began. Over the next month, laminated warnings began appearing like weeds on my front door. Noise violations. Unauthorized mechanical installations. One even claimed the pipe created a tripping hazard for neighborhood wildlife. I kept them as coffee coasters in the garage. Every ring was a badge of honor. Then came the storm. The real one. And as the rain turned the streets into rivers, I watched my monitor in the basement 3 commercial-grade sump pumps, each chewing through 10,000 gallons an hour, all purring like kittens. Until they didn't. In an instant, every green light blinked red, then went black. I raced downstairs. The pumps were silent. My heart punched my ribs as I checked the dedicated circuit dead. Not tripped. Disabled. I ran outside, sloshing through mud, to the community utility box I had personally installed my backup line through. And there it was. The breaker for my system had been thrown, locked with a bright orange padlock. HOA logo etched right into the metal. A laminated violation notice was taped inside the cabinet, protected from the rain. She had done it. In the middle of a storm, she walked out here and shut down my flood system. I wasn't mad. Not at first. I was in awe. The sheer spite, the audacity, it was almost beautiful. But what she didn't realize was that I didn't need her grid. Not anymore. I ran to the garage, flung open the bay doors, and with the rain and wind howling like a MOVIE soundtrack, I fired up the beast. Lights flickered, gauges danced, and that deep, muscular growl of a 20 kilowatts generator filled the air. It was glorious. Neighbors started to notice. My buddy Tom, next door, shouted over the storm, "What is that, Ryan? A backup reactor." "Better," I yelled back, dragging a cable as thick as a fire hose across the lawn. "It's liberation." I connected the beast directly to the manual override port I'd built into my home system, something Loretta never knew existed. In seconds, the pumps roared back to life, belching out torrents of water like angry geysers. And then, she came. Loretta, marching across her now soggy lawn, wrapped in a high visibility raincoat and holding her useless HOA clipboard in one hand and a half-flipped umbrella in the other. She stood at the edge of my driveway like a drenched dictator. "Mr. Maddox, what is the meaning of this machinery?" "This?" I asked, arms wide like a preacher at a revival. "This is salvation. It violates multiple statutes, noise ordinances, equipment size limits. It violates your sense of control, Loretta," I snapped. "That's all. It's legal, registered, grounded, and SAVYing not just my basement, but probably half the street. I'm calling the police." "Be my guest," I said, with the kind of grin that comes from holding all the cards. And they came. Officer Gomez, solid guy, tired, soaked, took one look at the beast, then at Loretta, then at the steady stream of water blasting from my sump system into the storm drain, and said, "Ma'am, unless you want to be liable for property damage, I'd suggest you go home." That should have been the end. But what happened next turned me from rebel engineer to neighborhood legend. As the flood spread and other homes began to flood, neighbors came, one by one, asking if they could borrow a line, hook up a pump, charge a sump. "I'll bake you bread for a year," shouted Mrs. Fennell. "You can name our next cat," offered the Kowalskis. Soon, my driveway looked like a FEMA command center. The beast was powering half the cul-de-sac, and Loretta? She watched it all unfold from her window, powerless. By dawn, the rain had stopped, but her lawn was a swamp. The flood had backed up and found its new lowest point, her basement. She resigned a week later. As for me, I installed a permanent system, city-approved, bypassing the HOA junction entirely. And the pipe? Upgraded to twice the diameter. Still painted white. Still visible from nowhere. Funny thing is, nobody's complained since. Because when the storm comes, people don't care about bylaws. They care about who has the beast. So yeah, I guess the moral is this. Never underestimate the power of spite and diesel. And if you ever find yourself in a flood fight with a laminated notice in your hand, you'd better hope the other guy doesn't have a generator with a name. Let me know what you would have done in my shoes, or if you think I went too far. Drop a comment and tell me, when is it okay to break the rules, and when do the rules need to drown a little? Like, share, and subscribe if you got plenty more stories from suburbia where this one came from.